So what we want to do is we want to actually see how to calibrate a system of a projector on a surface so that we can see the surface projected in a or augmented in the right way. And for this one, we needed to have two things: the surface geometry, surface shape, and also the geometry of the projector along with its display and so forth. So that's actually, we said we can model this as a pinhole camera, but in a kind of a reverse direction. So if I know the location of the point in the pixel, and if I know the rotation and translation of the projected with respect to the surface, and some sort of a aspect ratio and focal length and so forth, I can actually make sure that if this is the surface that is lighted by this pixel, then it is governed by this equation. So this is the display of that location and the surface projection where this thing is going to be projected on the surface. Now, this, of course, as I said, I need to have some sort of idea of the surface shape, because this equation tells me coming from the surface to the image. Whereas here, what we are going to do is we are going to go from display to the surface. So this means that I have a ray. This guy says, okay, you have a ray that comes from your pinhole center, goes through your UV, and this is supposed to be actually going through some sort of, let's say, the scaling and so forth. So this is the scaling part. And then this will be lighting some surface in the scene. And I need to know what the surface is by this equation, by this thing. If I know the rotation and translation of the surface, I can tell you where this ray is going to intersect your surface. So this is the R&T part of the thing that we need to know. Now, calibrating this, let's assume that, let's say for the time being, we have a fixed projector. So meaning that the projector is fixed and surface is fixed. Surface and the projector doesn't change shape during my application. Now this is then very easy. We can use the same technique that we did before. We say, okay, let's do it this way. I can do this in two ways or in multiple ways. The first way would be, let's put a pixel crosshair on my screen. So this is my display. I say, okay, here is a crosshair. And I know that this crosshair is going to be actually be seen on the surface somewhere, right? And I go there and I measure that. I measure that in this coordinate system. So I go there and actually do, let's say, some sort of a measurement. So in that case, if I actually do this one, if I can measure this one, I'm putting this in UV location by hand, right? And I'm measuring this one. Now I have an equation that I can solve for Kn RNT. This is the first one. I can actually do another point and then go and look at where it is actually in the image, in the scene, measure it, and get another equation, set of equations. So each of these measurements will give you two equations. So if I have 2 times n, that should be larger than or equal to the number of unknowns, which is, you can see it here. These are 5 here, 6 here, 11 unknowns. So if this is the case, I am done. N is, in that case, 6. So if n is larger than 6, then I solve this thing. So give me 6 points here with known coordinates, measure their coordinates. I have this calibration available to you. So this is one possibility. The difficulty of this calibration procedure is, okay, this part is easy. Just put a crosshair anywhere in your image. But this measurement part may not be that easy. How do I measure this thing, right? So this is the first thing. How do I measure it? Perhaps I can actually do the measurement in a different way. I can say, okay, I need to ask the question, can I actually track things in my environment? So let's assume that this is my environment, this is my surface, and this is where my projector is. So this is my projector, right? And then it puts a crosshair here. And assume that I have a camera. Now, I ask this camera to find the projector, projected shape, right? So this can see it, so you can see it here. For the projector, you have rho UPVP. One is K projector. Let's call this transformation projector, and X, Y, Z, and 1. This is the X, Y, Z okay, of this guy. I don't know where this thing is. I want to measure it. But I can actually create UV, UV, and UP and VP, which is in the image. And this is projected in this scene. I have this camera now. This camera is U camera, V camera 1, is some sort of a K camera, and T camera, X, Y, Z, and 1. Now I can actually say, okay, hey, put a crosshair here and observe that crosshair in the image. I can observe that, blink it, and then look at it and actually find it. If this is visible, it can observe it. Now I have this one. I don't know what this is. I want to measure this guy, right? And I don't know what these are. Perhaps one thing that I know is I may know this guy. If I know this guy, I may have calibrated this offline somewhere. Then I have two equations here. So this has two equations, but I have how many unknowns? For each equation, I have two unknowns, three unknowns, my world points. So these are three unknowns plus 11 unknowns from calibration, right? Here, the same thing. I have two equations, right? I have, assume that this is known. Now I have TC, this is 6 unknowns, plus 3 unknowns here, 3 unknowns of the 3D point. So you can see that I have in total 2 equations here, plus 2 equations per point. So I have 4 equations per point with 3 unknowns per point. These are the XYZ locations of this, plus I have 11 unknowns here, you can see, and 6 unknowns here. 6 unknowns, altogether 17 unknowns. Now, just simple pure counting of equations, you can see that 4 points, if I have n points, I will have n equations. This should be larger than, for each point, I will have 3 unknowns plus 17 unknowns. 17 unknowns, 11 for the projector system, 6 for the camera system. Then you can easily see that if I have 17 points or more of such thing, I can calibrate this system. Now you have a method where your calibration can be done by simply having a projector and, let's say, a camera pair. And if you put this camera next to your projector, then it is even easier. You fix these and then do this calibration somewhere, meaning that actually now you have this part of the calibration done. Then the next time you will have only 12 unknowns. And you can actually continue using this for a new surface and new surface and new surface and so forth. All right, so you can see that calibration doesn't need to be manual. You can add a simple camera to actually achieve that thing. And you can use this camera now for fixing things, for kind of a sanity check, saying that, okay, yes, I am actually putting something in the scene, but is it visible in the same place or not? So this camera can help you to actually fix these things. So, and now what you can do even further is you can actually take this camera and move around in the environment along with your projector. Now your projector doesn't need to be fixed. in that case, you can still calibrate the system as we have done before. And this time now projector can be actually moving in the environment. Of course, given that the camera is tracking your object here. So this tracking, for example, can be done by Vuforia, for example, or someone else. And this gives you the object location. And you know the internal calibration between these two, as we discussed just now. And now you have your projection equation to actually solve. So let's go back to, are there any questions regarding this on this one? So we are still using the same equation as before, just observing what we need to actually recover or calibrate and how we do that, what type of observations that we can add to the system. And in this case, just project something and observe something. If you recall, this we have done before when we discussed structured light sensors, right? So structured light sensor works the same way. You have a camera and a projector pair. Projector actually projects some known patterns in the scene, and the camera sees that pattern. And actually, once the calibration between them is established offline, you can use that to recover the scene. Now here we are using it in a different way. We are using the projector to actually induce some sort of a change in the scene or augmentation in the scene. Any questions? All right. So let's look at another perspective, another aspect of this thing. So what I want to do is I have a surface here, and I have a projector. And assuming that I have calibrated this projector now, meaning I have this equation UV1 rho is some sort of a pi times x, y, z, and 1. This is a 3x4 matrix. I have this equation. The previous calibration procedure, along with a camera, for example, might have generated this projection matrix for me. Now the question is, we are going to ask the question, I want to actually, let's say, display something on this surface. Let's say, assume that if I want to display just a point, that's easy, right? Just generate a ray here, just a single pixel, and project that pixel back in the scene. And it will actually hit here in this surface. It will actually give me the point in the right place, hopefully. I know where it's supposed to be. So I'm saying, okay, this is the thing that I want to recover. So I know, let's say, XYZ here. And I say, okay, in order for this XYZ to be actually lighted by your pixel, where is that pixel is going to be? Just make this multiplication, do the division, find the U and V, and in that image, U and V, just put the crosshair there, or put the, let's say, dot there. So this is simple. All right. Now, let's ask the question in a different way. I want to actually put, let's say, not a point, but a shape, a certain shape. Let's say that I want to put a circle, right? Now, let's start with a simpler case. Let's assume that I have a plane here, and I want to put a circle on this plane, but my projector is actually, let's say, is projecting this way. So I don't know how my projector is aligned, but one thing that I know is that my image plane, this is my display or image plane, and this is not aligned because of this fact that I have this pi matrix here, 3x4 matrix, XYZ1, and this guy, UV, is not aligned. This is not an identity matrix. Therefore, if I actually, let's say, draw a circle here in this image, this circle is going to be probably becoming an ellipsoidal shape, some sort of an ellipse, or maybe a little bit different than an ellipse. So it's not going to be, certainly, if these two things are not aligned, it's not going to be a circle. And we know this one. If I have a projector that is actually projecting something on a wall, and if the projector and the wall is not perfectly aligned in terms of, let's say, the geometry, when I draw a circle in my view, the circle is not going to be visible there. It's going to be visible as a, let's say, some sort of a deformed circle, looking like perhaps an ellipse, right? So how am I going to do this one? This is, I need to actually do this inversion process and make sure that if I want to actually display a circle here, maybe that circle is going to be some other shape here. I need to actually do this one, right? And the only thing that I have is I have this equation here. This is my calibration. Okay, so now, of course, what I can do is I can say, okay, let's actually assume that I know the circle and I know the surface where I want this circle to be appearing. So I can actually take this circle, let's say this circle, and create points on the circle, right? With some, let's say, if I make it a little bit bigger, can I make it bigger? Yeah. So I have one point here, another point here, another point here, another point there, another here, another here, and then I actually just join them together. So this is my circle now, and I join them together. Now I know these points X, Y, Z's. How? This is where I want to create them, right? So this is my idea. I want to create a circular shape in my 3D view. So what I can do is now I can take each of these X, Y, Z's, plug it in here, and find the UVs. And then in the UV, I will have these UVs and combine them. Now I have the circle, right? So this is as simple as this one. Very simple, right? So what if the surface is a little bit more complex, like this one? Is it? Yeah, this one, for example. If the surface is more complex, I want to actually draw a circle here. Let's say that I want to draw a circle here, like this. Now, from your perspective, to draw a circle here, you need to actually know, you need to actually get the circle in this world, and then again, find perhaps the points, part of the points, similarly, and find where those points are in this on the surface, and then project back them to here in the image and draw a whatever thing that you want to draw in the image. So this means that you have to actually kind of think about your surface and the projection of the things that you actually will induce on that surface and how it will look from your perspective. Now, of course, there is another issue here. If you have a viewer is somewhere here, for example. Now, you want the viewer to experience a circle visible in the scene. Now, this circle, from this perspective, you can actually draw a circle, but the viewer needs to see the circle. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that the viewer's view is a circular circle, and then this thing is going to be a different shape, perhaps in your image. So this projector augmented reality systems needs to actually, these systems need to think about the surfaces and need to know the surface shape properly to induce, let's say, the viewer, or induce some, let's say, visibility or some sort of a shape on that surface that is visible to the user as a proper shape, as an intended shape. Therefore, these things are not as simple. The rendering here is not as simple as, let's say, a rendering in the case of optical see-through or video see-through augmented reality. It is a little bit more complicated, but principles are the same. So you have to do a little bit, perhaps, more thinking about how to actually induce those views or induce those shapes so that I can perceive them properly. Because of that, usually you see these type of systems either going for very simple, let's say, augmentation. One of the well-known applications of this one is in automotive manufacturing. People have been using these type of devices or these type of projectors to actually aid the workers, let's say, for welding or drilling type of jobs. So assume that you have a very complex machinery here, and you want the user to actually weld something on this part of the surface. So let's say that this is a car and a car door, let's say, and you want the user to actually weld or drill something on this particular thing. So for that, what you do is perhaps you use a projector system, right? So you have a projector, you calibrate this thing, and then you just shine a light there, maybe a dot, a red dot, or maybe a crosshair or whatever. The shape of the crosshair or dot on that surface is not gonna matter to you much as long as it is on the right surface patch, so that the user sees that, goes and actually does the welding or does the drilling, whatever the task is. Now, in this type of applications, your projector may be a different type of a projector. So instead of, let's say, a projector, a visible light projector that we use, let's say, in our classrooms for projecting something on the surface, this could be a little bit difficult because these type of things requires a lot of light in an environment like, let's say, a factory floor. And in those cases, what people do is they use, let's say, a PTZ board, where you have a board, actually a PT board, not a PTZ board. So you have 2 degrees of freedom. So you put a laser pointer here. So this is your laser pointer, just a simple laser pointer. So it points something in the scene. And then this PTZ board actually can rotate this and tilt this. So 2 degrees of freedom. 2 degrees of freedom thing actually can point this to your environment. And then now you are done actually. So instead of actually now generating UV, I mean, this 2 degrees of freedom is similar to actually generating your UV here. So this is the angle that you are going to actually worry about. Right? So you can calibrate this very simply as we did before. You put a camera here, you put this on several different points on the surface, you measure them, you calibrate them, you get rid of your camera, or you can keep your camera if you want to track things, especially the surface. You track the surface, you say, okay, hey, I know where to actually put this thing in here, and I tell you from the reverse, maybe from even a lookup table, a simple lookup table, where there's 2 degrees of freedom for alpha and beta angles for the PTZ to be, or PT board to be. So in that case, you have PT angles, alpha and beta, let's say, and then you have your UV correspondence of this thing, or XYZ correspondence of this thing. You create a table, maybe a very simple table. You find your location here, and then you find your alpha and beta angle for that particular thing. You point it there, you're done. So now you see that this thing becomes very, very simple. You have just a lookup table that you have done using your calibration. And then you have just a PT board that is actually controlled by 2 parameters. You say, okay, point your laser to here, and you have a fixed laser, perhaps maybe a strobing laser or something like that. So this is very, very simple device, maybe just a fixed laser device, or maybe strobing light. So one control here, open and on and off. And then you have 2 controls here for the angle. And when you put this in a factory floor, you can actually achieve this very, very simply. There are very few things that can go wrong here. And then your algorithm becomes just a simple lookup table. So this has a lot of successful implementations in industrial settings. So the simple idea, once you calibrate this, can be actually used very effectively And of course you can say, okay, is this really an augmentation? And the answer is yes. Why not? Because what I am doing is I have an object in my scene, and we are putting a non-existing thing on that object and virtual thing on that object, which is actually registered to your 3D world in some virtual environment, and that helps me achieve a certain task. And that's a very, very simple, perhaps most basic form of augmentation, but could be very, very useful and could be very effective in designing, let's say, again, a useful system. So calibration is very simple in that case, right? So you actually have your surface here. You take your alpha and beta angles, you create points, you measure them x, y, z. You measure multiple of those, and then you create this lookup table. It doesn't need to be a lookup table, of course. You can actually generate this from your, again, from this UV1 row and this pi times XYZ, right? So once you actually, you know where to actually put your stuff in, you can go back and actually say, okay, where this UV is supposed to be. And then you can tie this UV to be your alpha and beta angles, and you are done in that case. All right, so any questions? So I have been talking almost, let's say 50, 100, and 130. So 2 hours and 10 minutes and no questions. So I can assume two things: either everybody is understanding and everybody is okay with what I am saying, or nobody understands anything, or maybe somebody. What's that?
Let's be optimistic.
Optimistic, okay. Meaning somewhere in the middle?
Around that.
All right.
And by the way, I have a question off topic about the lecture videos.
Okay.
It seems like Microsoft Teams automatically erases the videos after a certain time. And in the beginning of this class, you sir were uploading to YouTube, and I think we are a bit behind schedule in the uploading process. If it's possible,
Are we? Let me just check. Sure. I mean, I think I updated them the other day, but let me see where we are. Okay, here, Teams. I may have not updated the Word document, probably. Yeah. Oh, this is very old. Okay. Okay, I'll do this one. We have, let me see. Where are we?
Sir, can I question also off topic?
Hold on just a moment. Yeah, we have the 2nd of November. So we are missing 2 lectures here. Okay, I'll put this one after the lecture. Just give me 1 hour or so. I will update this. The videos are already there, but apparently I forgot to actually update this list. If you are seeing my channel, it should be already there. But I will update this one after this class.
Thank you.
Yes. Who was it? Someone else has a question.
I want to show my project to you tomorrow, but which time zone you will be in school in tomorrow?
I have a class between 8:30, 10:30. I will be probably available after 10:30, but I have a lot of meetings and stuff. So as I said, I cannot guarantee. If you want some sort of a guarantee, you can come next week at the class time. I was supposed to do it today, but I'm a little bit under the weather. So I'm staying home today just to get a little bit better, and hopefully I'll be good enough, well enough to resume my lectures tomorrow. But most probably 11:30 will be fine, because I just see that there was a meeting canceled. Since that meeting is canceled, I have time between 11:30 and 12:30.
Thank you, sir. Hocam geçmiş olsun. Neyiniz var?
Just probably a small maybe flu or something. I don't know. All right, so okay, any other questions? Okay, now there are other forms of this projected augmented reality, and so one of the things that actually people do quite a bit is things like, let's say, this. So you would see there is this group that made a lot of kind of noise, let's say, not necessarily noise, but some interesting concepts. They call this sixth sense. So this is from MIT. And what they have is they are talking about a very simple system. Let's say there are different versions of this one, but assume that, let's start with this one. Assume that you have a person. So you are seeing the environment. This is my person, interestingly. And you have a kind of a headset. And in the headset, you have a projector plus camera. So this is if you have a surface here, you can actually project this thing and you can see this projection and you can do a lot of fancy stuff with this one. Now, there are several things that we need to know about this thing. So we need to perhaps this will require surface geometry. Either you have it or you can recover it. So if you have a LiDAR, for example, you can recover the surface geometry. So now you have a LiDAR on top of this one, let's say, or maybe structured light sensor. Structured light sensor tells you what surface you are looking for. It tells you where you are with respect to that surface. And then now you can project things on that surface to do the interaction. Now you have your, let's say, hand coming into here. Now you can actually, let's say, when you cover the thing surface in this view, your projector and camera and LiDAR perhaps can tell you what you are doing on that surface. And for example, you can put a, let's say, a dial pad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 0, let's say something like this, maybe something like this, a dial pad. You can show this dial pad in a way that you see it as if it is actually a perfect dial pad there on that surface. And when you go and actually cover one of these things with your finger, you can also see the projector from the camera and the projector pair. You can see that this is covered, and you can use this as a augmentation or as a user interface to help you, let's say, do this one. Now, one of the advantages of this type of devices, you can make sure that this is visible to you only, because if you know the surface, and if I have a third person actually looking at from a second person looking at from a different angle, I can perhaps limit this thing such that this person cannot kind of oversee it, cannot actually perceive it. And if this is something, let's say, for his eye only or her eye only, then this will be actually taken out of the picture. So these type of applications are possible. Again, same principle. So you are using structured light or LiDAR to actually recover the geometry of the shape of the surface. You are using the projector camera pair to put your, let's say, interface, let's say, on the surface, and only for you if you want to. And you can do this type of, let's say, they call this success. Of course, this is not their original idea. Their original idea is a little bit different. So they say, okay, I have my hand here. I don't know if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers, right? So this is my hand here. I put a projector and camera pair here in my hand, like, let's say, on top of my hand. Now I can use this one to actually do the same thing. My environment is here. Now I am actually using my environment in a project with a projected augmented reality and with my fingers as an interaction device. So this is quite interesting, but of course, as I said, this requires a lot of different things to be in place. You need to either assume certain surface shape. Let's say in their original implementation, they were looking for a surface shape that is actually flat. But if this is flat, then you know that flat surfaces means instead of actually 3x4 matrices, it can be handled by as simple as a 2x2 matrix itself. So this is homography, if you recall. Some sort of homography can help us actually do the projection, so it will be easier to calibrate and so forth. But these days you can add to this one LiDAR or structured light sensors to actually get rid of this flatness assumption and perhaps do more interesting stuff than let's say originally assumed. But you can ask the question, is this the only possibility for me to actually do this type of, let's say, as I said, let's say these type of interfaces? No, it's not. If you have a head-mounted display, let's say HoloLens, you can actually create with HoloLens visible to you only interfaces. And you see these type of things quite a bit. So I wear my glasses, I have a, let's say, dial pad in front of me. I go and pick my dial pad entries with my hand. And then I'm actually doing an interface or entry only from my perspective, and nobody else knows it unless they hack my device. Even in that case, they may not be able to actually do that properly because they may not be able to have an access to what I am observing and what I am actually doing and so forth. So this can be used in, let's say, in hands-free and let's say for your eyes only type of let's say security check applications, and this is quite this could be quite useful in those type of cases. And of course there is this other aspect of the thing, right? So with a projected augmented reality, when I project the environment with something, everybody else can see that. So I am actually changing the environment globally, not locally. So when I actually put a projector and light something on the wall, I can see it, but a person next to me can see it as well. So that has an advantage. What is the advantage? The things that are created is not created only for me, but for a larger audience. We can actually see it all, and we can interact with them all. So I don't need to actually do this for me once, and then twice, second time for him, and the third time for her, and so forth, so that we can actually talk about the same thing. So collaboration, for example, could be an encouraging thing for these type of systems, whereas privacy would be, let's say, suffering. And of course, clutter in the environment will be also another part. So if you are doing augmentation for your only, and I am seeing that augmentation, I'm not gonna like it. Like when you play music, I want you to actually, perhaps if you are playing music for yourself only, you would put a let's say, headset to listen to it so that you don't bother me. Same thing with the visual augmentation. If you are doing visual augmentation, you would want to actually see it on yourself, and so that your next door neighbor or your, let's say, coworker or whoever is around you, they are not distracted by what is going on there. So these are the things that you have to actually somehow kind of, let's say, think about, right? So they have both advantages. Again, projected augmented reality has its advantages, but also disadvantages as well. Same as with the, let's say, with the other one. let's say with the optical see-through devices, you are starting seeing people. Let's say if you see people, especially I have seen a lot of people trying these devices in fairs and in shows, trade shows, and so forth. There you see people doing weird stuff like this, and then they are going like this. And now you think that this is not, let's say, distracting, but it is distracting, right? So you are doing something. I don't know what you are doing, and you are the only one that actually gets benefit out of it. But from the outside, when we look at it, people are actually seeing you as doing some weird, let's say, motions like this. What is this? What are you doing with this one? Are you, let's say, signaling something to me, or you are actually doing something for yourself? Perhaps you are doing it for yourself, but maybe in some cultures this might be some maybe something that is actually a hand gesture that is not positive. Maybe it is negative, right? So these type of things you have to be careful as well. So head-mounted displays offer you privacy and perhaps less intrusion to the world in terms of actually putting a, let's say, a light or changing a surface property somehow, light-wise or appearance-wise, but it actually brings up some other things. You have these bulky glasses in front wearing, and you are doing some weird motions in the environment that actually will bother me. Like you might be listening to music sitting down like this. This is fine, but then you start actually, let's say, maybe lip syncing with the music, maybe perhaps, or start dancing to the music. And I don't see I don't hear the music, but I see you're dancing, and that will be probably very distracting to me. I wouldn't like it, perhaps. Well, maybe someone would like it, but depending on actually the environment that you are in. So what I'm trying to say here is that even though we have these, let's say, the limitations of these technologies, they add something to the environment. They may clutter the environment. They may, let's say, be easy to do. They may be difficult to do, and so forth. But each of them has their advantages and disadvantages, and you have to be careful with the side effects as well as, let's say, how to do it. I mean, you want to deliver something to a person, but at the same time, you have to be careful with the side effect. If you recall, I have shown you a picture of someone sitting in the middle at the beginning of the class, someone sitting in the middle of nowhere with their glasses, with a, let's say, an virtual reality glasses, and looking around. And you see that actually from this the perspective of the usage, this is perfect use, right? Usage. You take the person, you put it in an environment. Let's say there is some event going on, and he's living through that event by sitting in the middle of it. Maybe let's say he is in the middle of the, let's say, the I don't know, maybe a battlefield or an arena or a theater or whatever, right? But from the outside, when you look at it, it looks weird. It looks dangerous, even dangerous. So someone can actually come and hit him, and he would not even respond to, let's say, those type of dangers. Maybe some wild animals will actually come and, let's say, do something. Or maybe a seagull is going to actually try to pick something on him or whatever. So these type of side effects has to be a part of the consideration when you design such a system. All right, so they are not side effect free. So you have to be, let's say, you have to consider various side effects of designing such a system, which we'll be discussing in depth when we talk about usability perspective. But it's probably the right time to actually say something about it now. Okay.
Speaking of which, what are your thoughts about metaverse?
I mean, metaverse is okay. We are being recorded, but I'll say it. I did some. I shared my comments on that on Sunday when I was giving a kind of a seminar on AR and in general what the impact of AR is. So if you look at metaverse, metaverse is kind of a rebranding of let's say internet with some 3D content and a way to, let's say, people experience this 3D content through internet. So there are two parts of it. One part is it's a natural, let's say, evolution of internet, because especially social media, let's start with from that one. We have been having the social media in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, let's say. And you see that things started with simple, let's say, texts, and then pictures, and then videos, and some weird interpretation of videos, not necessarily from weird to me, but not necessarily to you, like TikTok and so forth. Now, we have, as human beings, we are consuming those things, and they are now old. They are. I mean, it's not interesting anymore to actually, or I mean, it has some interest still, but it's an old interest to actually look at a video or repeating video or a picture or a tweet or whatever. They still are useful, quite useful, but from the, let's say, innovation perspective, from a newness, from, let's say, from a newness perspective, it's not there anymore. So what is the next one? The next one is obviously 3D. And metaverse is just a simple rebranding of this 3D content delivery mechanisms to through internet as a perhaps as an extension of social media to people. So what do we mean by 3D content, and what do we mean by actually delivering this content to the user through the internet? So it's as simple as 2D interfaces, like your let's say conventional devices, like let's say my laptop, your, let's say, tablet, and other person's, let's say, smartphone. So this is one way of delivering this. Of course, this is a kind of an extension of existing thing with a twist to a 3D, more 3D things. But this is not going to be, let's say, staying there. The basic idea is to actually have these more immersive, right? So when we talk about immersion, we talk about head-mounted displays and so forth, right? So the delivery of the 3D content to masses through as part of social media or social interaction mechanism, as a social interaction mechanism, is again a rebranding of the name that has been there. So if you look at actually, let's say, these social media kind of, let's say, platforms, VR chat or let's say Second Life, they have been around for a long while, especially Second Life and 3D, let's say, virtual environments like PlayStation had one, and a lot of other places, but Second Life is probably one of the most important or most well-known one. It has been around since mid 2000s, maybe even earlier than that. Now, metaverse is just a rebranding of what is existing, but again, not necessarily surprisingly, it's coming from a social media company as an extension of, I mean, their content delivery mechanisms are actually, I think, dwindling. So this is a next area to move on. And this is what I am looking at and how I am looking at metaverse. Metaverse is there, always there, was there. Not necessarily as popular, was not as popular as, let's say, other verses, like let's say Twitter or let's say TikTok or whatever. Now it may get a little bit more. I think Facebook and others, especially Apple, also is going to contribute to this one. with their eyeglasses. They're going to actually push this towards there. I don't know what will happen at the end. I'm not. I don't think it will be as. I mean, it may be, but it is hard to imagine it being as, let's say, as popular as, let's say, Facebook's beginnings or Twitter's beginnings and so forth, because these are a little bit more involved things, and it changes, it enforces more, let's say, drastic changes to people's lives than, let's say, just having a 2D screen and actually just looking at it for a long period of time. This is going to be actually putting glasses and looking at things from to certain things for a long period of time with real, let's say, social isolation. I don't know how big that is going to be. It may be big, but as I said, from technology perspective, it has been around. It's just a rebranding of actually what is existing, but coming coming from, let's say, these social media companies might actually popularize it, and it may turn out to be quite drastic and actually quite disruptive as well. And that's what they are betting on, I know. But I'm not 100% sure if it is going to be that disruptive, but it might be.
All right, thank you, sir.
But again, metaverse is just a rebranding of what is existing. I mean, Second Life has been there for a long while as a gaming platform, as a serious gaming platform. People have been actually, we have in the past, in the late 2000s, we have hosted virtual events in Second Life, in full 3D, like conferences and so forth. Of course, with the kind of with what COVID has taught us, with this remote working and so forth, there might be some let's say, easy transformation to these type of things. We can talk about that later again next week. I think we are out of time. So thank you for your interest. I'm going to stop the recording here.